Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Crypt Finder. So tonight, double feature night, and it's all 70s stalker style. I wanted to talk about two very suspenseful made-for-TV movies, both of them from 1978. They actually aired just about 2.5 months apart from each other, and this was right on the cusp of when sort of the slasher films were going to dominate the box office. But these were made for TV movies, and they were beaming some stalking stories that were pretty chilling into America's living rooms. And they did the thing that, what you would think that they would do. Number one, they built a lot of tension. Number two, they were really dealing with a lot of anxieties and real life fears. And three, they definitely paved the way for a lot of other horror movies to come in this same subgenre. So, okay, let's get to it. First up is a little gem that definitely sort of deals out the paranoia, the suspense, and the John Carpenter creepiness. This film actually aired on November 29th, 1978. It starred the always captivating Lauren Hutton, and it was directed by John Carpenter, just right before he was just going to scare the world silly with Halloween. The movie is Someone's Watching Me. Now, picture this. A young, successful woman named Lee Michaels. She's played by Lauren Hutton. She's just moved into a high-rise apartment in Los Angeles. She's ready for a fresh start in a new city, a place where she can live life on her own terms. She's a TV producer and a good one, but what starts out as a new chapter in her life quickly turns into a living nightmare. Lee starts receiving strange phone calls. They're unsettling at first, but then they turn threatening. Lee soon realizes that she's being watched constantly, obsessively, and the phone calls it's just the beginning. Whoever is stalking her has wormed their way into every part of her life, invading her home, her privacy, playing tricks on her mind, but no one believes her without proof. And when the stalker's sinister game escalates, the question becomes, can Lee outsmart him before he gets too close? What makes Someone's Watching Me so unnerving is the fact that it taps into a lot of real-life fears. You know the kind when you're alone in your home or your apartment, you hear a creak in the hallway, suddenly every shadow feels like a threat, or that there are eyes constantly on you. Carpenter builds the tension slowly, expertly. He's giving us just a taste of the psychological terror he would later master in Halloween. If you are a fan of early John Carpenter, then you're certainly going to see some of his trademark shots here, even down to some of the character POV. This made-for-TV thriller, it might not have the gore or the jump scares, or it's not a traditional type of slasher flick, but yeah, trust me, it'll have you checking the doors and the windows and second-guessing every noise you hear, even after the credits roll. And Lauren Hutton gives a very gripping performance. She's balancing strength and vulnerability here. It makes you just root for her character all the more. It's an interesting character. She has a very quirky sense of humor. She's a TV producer, as I mentioned. She's smart. She's with it. But she's also just a person struggling to start a new chapter in her life, and she's suddenly completely derailed by this obsessive stalker. So this is going to come as a shocker because I am constantly saying in this particular series, I saw it when it first aired. No, I missed this one altogether somewhere along the way. So I came into this one brand new, and I've got to say, it did subvert some moments for me. I naturally assumed that when Lee began dating a new man, Paul Windlass, he's played by David Burney here, I thought he would be killed off in short order due to the stalker's jealousy, but that doesn't happen. The stalker is much more interested in keeping distance between the victims. There's no fits of jealousy here. It's much more about power and psychologically terrorizing the victims. Or I thought that perhaps Paul Windlass was actually going to be the stalker. That didn't happen either. There's a really interesting series on Netflix called I Am a Stalker, and it really just points out that they come in all degrees of variations and also degrees of severity. So kudos to John Carpenter's script and his savvy direction. He doesn't fall into some of the standard tropes here, not only for thrillers, but also where you could sort of fall into the trap of lumping stalkers in with so many other character tropes that we've seen before and since. Another interesting note is that Adrienne Barbeau co-stars here. She's one of Lee's co-workers at the TV station, and she just happens to be a lesbian. Now, you would possibly think in 1978 that that would be a sort of hot button topic for a made-for-TV movie, or that it would somehow culminate in some way or become more of an issue than it is, but it's not. It's just handled as sort of a casual fact. No big dramatic moments at all. So little touches like these really elevate the film and help make it feel so much more current than when it originally aired. So what happens when you're sure that someone is watching you? Are you just paranoid, or no, is there someone actually lurking in the shadows? And for Lee Michaels, it turns out the answer is a dangerous one. And trying to figure out how this stalker knows so much about Lee and can seemingly control the lights in her apartment and the elevators, that's just as much fun for the audience to figure out as it is for the characters. Someone is Watching Me is a slow burn thriller, but it has a timeless premise to it. It really manages to crawl under your skin, and Lee's character, she fights back, which is nice to see. If you're a fan of Carpenter's work, you're going to see the early seeds of his brilliance planted right here in this overlooked classic. Now, before you run off real quick to check the locks on the doors and the windows and pull the curtains closed because now you're feeling just slightly vulnerable, hang on. Let me get into the second feature that I wanted to review tonight. Are You in the House Alone is a made-for-TV horror thriller directed by Walter Groman and based on Richard Peck's 1976 novel of the same name. This aired on CBS September 20th, 1978, and it really tackles sort of the themes of teenage vulnerability, societal indifference. It sometimes gets overshadowed by the movie When a Stranger Called, which debuted just a year later, but this is a solid made-for-TV watch. This film follows 16-year-old Gail Osborne. She's played by Kathleen Beller, who would go on to play Kirby Anders Colby in Dynasty. But here, the character Gail, she's intelligent. She's somewhat introverted. She's a high school student who is adjusting to a new life in a new town with her family. They've recently moved from San Francisco to this quiet suburban community. Her father actually commutes back and forth still to San Francisco because he's an architect. Gail must navigate the societal and personal challenges that just naturally come with a new environment. Gail spends a lot of time on her passion, which is photography, and she has a few friends, but for the most part, she still feels like an outsider. On a blind date with a fellow student named Steve Pastorinus, she finally begins to kind of come into her own. He's charming and sensitive, and they totally fall for each other. Steve is played by Scott Colomby, and if he looks familiar, yes, he should. He actually starred in Porky's. He was also in Porky's 2 the next day, and he played the unforgettable Tony D'Annunzio in Caddyshack. Gail's life takes an unsettling left turn when she suddenly begins receiving very unusual anonymous phone calls, and she begins receiving very cryptic notes in her locker at school. At first, she thinks these are just a prank from classmates or someone maybe trying to get attention or a reaction. However, the situation becomes more intense when the harassment escalates and she starts feeling genuinely threatened. As the calls and the notes become much more frequent and more personal, Gail is just unable to shake this uneasy sense of fear. She confides in her mother, Ann Osborne, who's played here by Tony Award-winning actor Blythe Danner. But the response she receives isn't as serious as she hopes. Her mother is preoccupied with her own personal life, and she doesn't fully understand the depth of her daughter's distress. Gail also finds out her father has lost his job, and she doesn't want to burden him with this situation. So instead, she tries to find comfort in her friendships, particularly Allison Bremer and Allison's boyfriend Phil Lawver, a super young Dennis Quaid just before he hit megastardom with movies like Breaking Away, The Right Stuff, Interspace, Postcards from the Edge, and then also 2024's The Substance. The threats continue, and Gail begins to become more and more unhinged because she realizes that whoever this stalker is knows very intimate details of her life. The film delves into themes of vulnerability, teenage isolation, stalking, the fear of the unknown. While it has elements of a typical sort of stalker thriller, Are You in the House Alone also explores the emotional and psychological toll that such an experience takes on a young person, particularly when they feel that no one around them fully grasps the gravity of the situation. Whereas this film starts out kind of like a traditional thriller with Gail's paranoia about who is watching her and instigating these threats, this movie does a hard pivot and suddenly becomes much more about overcoming trauma and learning to fight back. This film's portrayal of a teenage trauma and the societal responses was considered pretty progressive for its time, even for 1978. This film is tackling some themes that are tough to watch even now. And as I mentioned before, Are You in the House Alone is marketed as a horror film. It's not. It starts off much more as a psychological thriller. The idea of a stalker tracking the character's movements, but then the film shifts midway through into something much more intense. It examines the real life horrors of not only stalking, but assault. And that's just a warning. If there are certain triggers for you, the film does go to some places you would not expect for a made for TV movie. And just like in Someone Is Watching Me, the character here, she decides to fight back. She will not sweep it under the rug, but instead she is determined to do something about it. The movie balances suspense with psychological undercurrent as Gail's personal turmoil and the mounting tension create a real sense of unease here. The story is not just about physical threats, but also the emotional vulnerability that comes with being a teenager, trying to figure out who you can trust when faced with unknown danger. While the events unfold in a relatively contained suburban setting, the implications of the harassment and the assault feel very real, very relatable, creating an atmosphere where the viewers become just as unsure about what will happen next as Gail does. This movie has really gotten sort of shortchanged over the years. I think too many people have approached it with, oh, it has sort of a horror bent in the beginning and then turns into an after school special, and that's not really true at all. It's a story about learning how to deal with fear, how to deal with the trauma that comes from this kind of assault, and finding the strength to stand up in the face of adversity. It's a unique and emotionally charged entry into the made-for-TV thriller genre of the late 1970s. For those interested in exploring 1970s TV horror, Are You in the House Alone? It offers a poignant and suspenseful experience that sort of stands out from the typical genre fare. These two films can certainly be added to the sort of stalking subgenre of films that ended up producing so many more, including the likes of Unsane from 2018. You have Single White Female in 1992, Fear in 1996. From 2002, you have 1 Hour Photo and also the movie Enough. You have Swim Fan from 2002. You have Obsessed from 2009, Watcher from 2022, and Stalker from the exact same year, 2022, Baby Reindeer from 2024, and on. The list could just keep going because that's really just the tip of the iceberg. Please be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. And whether you've seen these movies from years ago or you go and watch them, please let us know your thoughts. I love reading all of your comments. I'll be here, of course, lurking in the dark, waiting to bring you more hidden horrors and some forgotten gems here and there. So until next time, everyone, stay curious, stay scared. Oh, And now, yes, you can go double check the locks on those doors and windows. Pull those curtains tightly closed. Good night.